Yes, and she's going to tell you all about whatever she wants. I'm going to tell you, so I don't ruin whatever she wants to say.
Hi, so yes, my name is Vanessa, and I do currently live in Billings, but I was born and raised here in Shelley. So my mom still lives here. It's a little nerve-wracking for me. I'm used to doing this in front of complete strangers, which is somehow more relaxing. So seeing faces that I know makes me a little nervous, but I'm really excited to be here. And just to tell you a little bit about me, so I didn't take advantage of learning how to quilt for my mother. I thought I wanted to make clothes, and turns out I was not good at that. So I got really frustrated at sewing right from the get-go, so I didn't do it for a while. And then about 3.5 years ago, I got married, and my husband's mother had a quilt shop that had just closed, and in her quilt shop she had 2 long arms. And so she had to close her quilt shop to relocate for her husband's job, but she kept her 2 gamble long arms when she moved and kept all of her clientele. And so when I married into the family, I just jumped right into long arm quilting. And I mean, not to brag, but I picked it up really fast and I was really good at it right from the get-go. And then I slowly started making, one teeny baby quilt and then branch out and try one more. So I really consider myself a novice piecer. I haven't done a lot, but because of that clientele we had and the quilts coming in, I've quilted hundreds of quilts. So kind of a reverse way into quilting. Very strange, but I've learned to love it a lot. And now I live in Billings. We're the gamble long arm dealer for Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. So my husband travels and services all of the machines, and I get to demo them and teach classes. And now what I'm mostly going to talk about today is how to not frustrate your long arm quilter. So there's a lot of different things that go into when you're piecing your quilts, sewing your borders on so you don't have fullness, prepping your back so it's ready, and then the things that you want to ask your long armer so that you're getting the results you want. So your thread type, your batting type, and the pattern that ultimately they'll stitch out for you. So we're going to start talk about pressing your quilt as you piece them. So some patterns will give you really specific instructions on which directions to piece a block so that all of your corners nest. That way the quilt will lay really flat. If you have a quilt with a lot of seams, when you lay it on the long arm, those seams tend to act as legs if they're not pressed, and the whole quilt will just kind of float on top of the batting. And then every pass that comes across your long arm will push that seam in a different direction. So quilts that are maybe stitched very straight end up with very wavy lines because of the direction that seam is pushed. So some long arm quilters will press your quilts for you, but usually at an additional charge. So that is one way to really mitigate a lot of problems and make your end result much more beautiful. Oh, one other thing about pressing, if you're using a thicker fabric where you have several points coming together at one spot, maybe 8 points coming together, that seam is going to be very thick no matter how well it's pressed. Your hopping foot that comes across your long arm will catch on that. So what we have done with our customer quilts is we put scrap batting on either side of it, and then we just use a little hammer and flatten those seams out so that it's a lot smoother and there's no chance of the long arm catching on that seam as it quilts. So I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. I was going to ask how many of you have ever taken a quilt to a long armor? Okay. How many of you liked the results you got with that long armor and would go to her again, or him? Yeah? Okay, good. How many of you have maybe rented a machine and tried to quilt your own quilts? A couple. Okay. Cool. And then, yeah. Okay. Good. So the next step of finishing your quilt top so that it's ready for your long arm quilter is your borders. This is one of the most frequent problems we run into, and my mother-in-law and I always joke that if we don't square up a block perfectly, we always say, "Oh, a good quilter can quilt that out," which isn't really true, but they can try really hard. And so it's kind of the same with borders. A good quilter can work in that fullness if you have excess in your borders, but you will kind of have wavy tops, or the fabric will fold as it quilts. All things that you want to avoid. So what we recommend in the way that we teach borders is to, I'm going to use this board here. So the best way to make sure that you're not adding extra fabric, and that's what a lot of issues that we had is people just say, "Oh, I want a 6-inch border." And so if you strip, stitch down when it gets to the end, cut it off. Right? We want to avoid that. So what you do is from the center of your quilt, measure top to bottom here. And then you cut 2 borders of that length. If you need to, you can pin the quilt and the border in fourths. So fold them in fourths, place pins there, and then fit them in to those points on the border. And then if you have one side that tends to be a little bit fuller than the other side, put that side down so that that side is against your feet dogs, and that will help work in the fullness without having to really stretch your fabric. So you stitch both your side borders on. And then we press to the border. So you're going to press these 2 seams to the border, and then do the same thing and measure across this way. Cut your 2 borders, mark your 4 points, and stitch them on. So that way everything lays nice and flat. It's very square, and your quilter will love you. So does anybody have any questions so far about that? We're going to talk about how to do everything. So if you like to do miter, oh, yes.
When you're sewing on border, do you like the stretch to go up and down or across?
I don't know that I've noticed a difference in like how it affects quilting. So I don't know. If you, yeah, I don't know that I have ever noticed that.
What's the fabric has a definite stretch one way or the other. So do you like most of the stretch going up and down, or do you like it to go across? Well, I prefer mine to go across because then you don't get that stretch. You don't get that wavering.
Yeah.
You have a stretch going up.
Gotcha.
Which way can't you want to stretch? Is it?
It stretches selvage to selvage.
It stretches selvage.
I think it stretches selvage to selvage. It doesn't stretch up to deep.
Gotcha. So then your selvage would be this way? Is that what I'm understanding? I guess if it's not on the bias,
Selvage,
then
yeah, does it stretch more selvage to selvage? And if you cut the length of if you had a full length from, cut to cut, that wouldn't stretch. Is that what you're saying?
right.
Yes, and so,
So your stretch would go.
where you get the most stretch. So I go the length of the fabric.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, another question.
Yeah.
Okay, so do have you run across people who decide that they really want to have a bias border? Does that make you crazy?
Yeah. If they're not impossible, but they are a little bit more difficult to work with. But if you follow this, that tends to mitigate a lot of the stretch from a bias. The other thing we've run into is, we had a very large, king size quilt brought in that was half square triangles, but it was on point. So every triangle edge was on the bias, and they had just cut, so even though their border was not on the bias, their triangles were, and we ended up unpicking it for them and took about 8.5 inches off of each border because it had stretched that much. So you have to be very, pay a lot of attention to the bias and how long should this be versus how long can I make it. So, yeah. Okay, so the next part of prepping your quilt is your backing, getting your backing ready. So, one of the most common issues is not having a square back. So when most quilters, every quilter kind of does things different, but most of the time, if this is like a top view from your long arm. So there's usually a bar at the back of the machine and a bar at the front that's a little bit lower. So they pin your quilt, and I always try to pin the selvage to this bar, so there's a leader there that they pin to. So if this line isn't straight on your backing, then your whole quilt's gonna roll crooked. So it's very important to square your quilt. So usually we just recommend, cutting perpendicular to your selvage edge, or if you have a piece of fabric that doesn't have a selvage, I like to fold it in half and line up the bottom edges as well as I can. And then at that point, I use my fold as my new selvage edge and use that to cut square to. If you have to piece it up back, always add extra if you're trying to match the pattern on the back if you try to line it up. And we recommend using a base stitch or a stay stitch, right? Stay stitch. All the way around your quilt so that all of those piece edges don't come undone. So when your backing is loaded on a long arm frame, we try not to stretch the backing, but it's definitely pulled very tight so that because you can't see the backing. Once you have the batting on and the top, you're kind of just working on faith for the bottom that there's not going to be any folds or tucks. So it's stretched pretty tight on that frame. And so if your seams aren't stitched down nice and tight, then everything just starts to kind of pull apart. So do a nice stay stitch around your back. And then most quilters can get away with 4 inches of extra on every side of your quilt. So if your quilt is 70 by 80, make your backing 78 by 88. So there's 4 inches on every side because again, they have to be pinned to these leaders. But then on the outside edges of your quilt, as it's rolled, most quilters will baste that edge or stay stitch it so that it stays where it's supposed to be. And if your backing is as exactly wide as your top, they don't really have a lot of room to work with that. We also have clamps that come from the legs of the machine over here. So this is your quilt top. It's mostly rolled up down here on this. And then the leg of the machine over here has clamps that come over and hook onto the side. So it really pulls it nice and tight in every direction. So, any questions about backings? They're really pretty simple. Just keep them nice and square.
If the back of your quilt isn't pieced, you don't have to stay stitch around it?
Not
Or
usually,
Okay.
no. That shouldn't affect it, unless it frays really easy, but yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes, with miter corners, I don't claim to be an expert at them, but the biggest thing to be aware of is usually I do like an extra 6 inches on top of the width of my border. as the length. I don't know if that makes sense. So to get this length for your miter corner, you would measure from here to here on your quilt, and then add the width of your border plus 6 inches. Width of your border times 2 plus 6 inches. I don't know the equation for that, but I have a link to it. So, anyways, the point is whatever this measurement is here, you need to measure that on your backing and mark those same points. So with most miter corners, you stitch it on up to 1/4 inch away from your edge. So you would just mark those same pins and stitch it so it doesn't stretch. And then to do a miter corner, I fold my quilt at a diagonal. So this is my quilt folded right sides together. And then I have my 2 borders coming off the edge like this. And then you start at 1/4 inch away and sew this at a 45-degree angle. So I'm guessing pretty standard for miter corners, but the most important part is to just make sure that you're not adding a lot more than is necessary, so you don't have fullness in that border. So, so I have a few links to a couple different things that I've talked about. I wasn't quite sure how many people to plan on. So if I have a little sign up, if you want to leave me your email, I'll kind of send you all the links and kind of an overview of what I talked about, so you have it all in writing.
Do you have to make the border of the top bigger when it's machine folded, or just the size of the quilt that you want?
Just the size of the quilt that you want. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is choosing your thread. So most long armors have 1 or 2 types of thread that they use regularly that they know works with their machine. There's tons of different types of threads out there. I'm not going to really get into the different types, but just know that they come in different materials and they're also different weights. So what I recommend is asking your long arm quilter to maybe see a sample of something she's done and see if that's the look you're going for. And maybe see if she would be willing, if the thread is too thick, ask her if she could recommend a lighter weight thread so maybe your stitches hide better. But mostly just don't be afraid to ask her and see what her stitching normally looks like to make sure it's what you want. There's extremely shiny threads, there's sparkly threads, there's polyester, cotton, tons of different types. So we kind of just stuck with one type in our business and had the whole array of colors. And then our customers kind of knew that we had a good eye for it, and they would say, oh yeah, just whatever shade of pink you think looks best, and would trust us to pick that out. So if you feel comfortable,
Do you use 100% cotton, or do you use a polycotton?
personally, I mostly use a thread called Omni, and it's actually a poly wrapped poly.
Is it?
It is. I really like it. I know there's a lot of debate about using poly threads on cotton fabrics. So it's just personal preference, but that's the one that I have the least trouble with. Omni. Yeah. Yeah. So talk to your quilter, see what they like to use, and see if it's the desired look that you want. The other thing with taking out thread, if you want a lot more say in what color thread is used, is just trying to find something that, I don't want to say blends in, because your quilting's going to stand out as it is. If you have really dark thread on a light fabric, it's going to take away from the quilt. So you want something that blends in and looks good, because your quilting is going to stand out either way. So if you have, for example, let me show you this one real quick. This is all white and black, but it's actually quilted with light pink thread. There's pink on the back. So kind of unusual that light pink would work, but you kind of don't want, you want to avoid the very contrasting threads. Most modern quilters will also love you if you don't pick white for the top and black for the bottom. The way long arms quilt is they knot in the middle, so you can almost always see the bottom on the top and the top on the bottom. That's how it's supposed to look. So if you have a white top and you put a black back on it, you're gonna have black specks on your top. So most of the time we try to recommend, similar colors or even the exact same color for top and bottom. Okay, so now we'll talk about the different types of batting and when to use them. Okay. All right, so our shop right now currently carries Hobbs batting. There's tons of different types of batting out there, but primarily this should cover most of the basics. So the first one we're going to talk about is 100% cotton batting. So this is a very nice natural fiber. The Hobbs type has scrim, which we'll get into scrim a little bit later. So cotton batting is usually a bit thinner. It's not too heavy. The thing that I like about cotton and when I use it is for antique tops or tops that I want to look antique. So this top looks very antique. I quilted it 3 months ago. So with a very tight quilting pattern, and then washing it and drying it at a very high heat, the cotton will shrink about 5%, and you get this really nice, yummy, crinkled cotton look. So if you find an old vintage top at a garage sale and want to quilt it but don't want it to look modern, this is an amazingly quick way to do it. You can enjoy the quilt top and the look of it. If you don't want your cotton to crinkle like this and shrink, just wash it on cold water and air dry it. And then you won't have the shrinkage. Okay, so the next one is polyester. There are a lot of different, polyester is in ounces. So this is a 6 ounce polyester batting. So it's 100% synthetic. Polyester is awesome for baby quilts and quilts that you want to be extremely warm. Polyester isn't going to breathe very well, so it's a very, very warm batting. Like I said, this comes in different weights. This is probably one of the smallest weights you can get it in. Most people prefer like a 12 ounce that's quite a bit puffier. So this one is quilted with 1 layer of poly. It's nice and puffy. It also works amazing with different types of backing. So if you're doing a flannel back or a minky back, the polyester is very complementary to those different types that are really snuggly and kid-friendly. Polyester also washes up really easy. You can wash it 5 times a day, and it doesn't really break down ever. It's just very hardy, really great for kids. Okay, the next one is probably the most common, I think. So this is a cotton poly blend. So most of the time you'll see these with their ratio. So if it's an 80-20 blend, that means that it's 80% cotton and 20% poly. This one usually comes in different colors too. So we have some quilters that frequently use really dark fabric, and they'll purchase it in black so that the white batting doesn't show through. But this is just a really versatile way to use cotton. It's not as expensive as 100% cotton, but you get the same look and feel. So this one here is quilted with 100% cotton, 80-20 cotton poly. So just gives it a really nice flat shape. It's gonna hang pretty well. With this specific quilt, well, I'll talk more about it in a minute. So that's 80-20, very common for most of your rural quilts, I think. Okay, and then the last one is wool. So wool is, again, 100% natural fiber. It has a beautiful loft to it. And unlike poly, wool breathes. So wool makes really nice, cuddly summer blankets that you're not gonna get too hot in. So most of my quilts that are gonna be on the back of the couch, that are on my bed, are made from wool. So they are a little bit more high maintenance as far as washing and drying goes, but they just are so cuddly and kind of cool. So if you have a cotton quilt and you just want to feel nice and cool but warm, does that make sense? A little contradictory, but it has a really nice puffiness to it, really nice loft without being too heavy and too warm. I typically don't use wool in baby blankets because it is I shouldn't say very high maintenance. It's a little bit more high maintenance. So the last quilt I want to show you, for show quilts, a lot of people, I've seen this a ton lately, will use 2 layers of batting in their quilts. So they'll use either an 80-20 or a 100% cotton as their bottom layer, and that gives the quilt a very nice shape. And then they'll use either a wool or a poly as their top layer to really fill out the quilting so that it has a nice look to it. So this one has 2 layers.
I'll help her.
Oh, thanks. I think this is the top. Right, switch. So this is my house quilt because even though I live in Montana, Idaho is always my home. So with the wool batting on top, you get really nice texture, but then the 80-20 on the back keeps its shape. So that's been very popular lately that I've seen a ton at shows is the double layer batting.
Did you make that design?
I did. Yeah, I drew it up on graph paper and yeah. This is one of the first quilts that from start to finish, I planned the whole thing, pieced the whole top, did everything on it. It's kind of my baby.
Let the image show us the bottom.
Oh, yeah. And luckily my mother kept half her fabric store, my mother-in-law kept half her fabric store, so this isn't all from my own stash, it's mostly from hers, but yeah, I'm very spoiled. What can I say?
You should sell your pattern.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all computerized quilting. I'll show you the back. So all of this, they call it graffiti quilting. This is all computerized. So I just program it and then let the computer do the work. So. Thanks. So then, back to this quilt real quick. This was one of the first custom ones that I did. And if I had known that 2 layers of batting was so awesome, I should have done a second layer of puffy batting on this one, because some of the triangles just look a little flat to me. So if it had 2 layers of batting, these kind of empty spaces would stand out a lot more. So just kind of depending on the look you're going for, and if it's going to be hanging in a show or if it's hanging on your wall, 2 layers of batting is definitely the way to go. So. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on is your quilt pattern. So every, no, I was just gonna send it over to Blair. Oh, yes.
What about bamboo batting? What are you thinking of that?
So I haven't personally used it, but I've heard that it's, I've heard really good things about it. It is definitely one of the more expensive battings, but for a natural fiber, I've heard that it quilts up really nice. Same as wool, you're going to have, a more intense care and maintenance on it. You can't just wash it and dry it like the poly.
Be a little more girls.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a few quilts done with that, and I really quite like
Oh, that's
the
good.
finished product.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, I personally haven't tried it.
So it's a little more expensive than wool, or about the same.
I think it's comparable to wool. Yeah.
So what should you do with
Okay, good question. So with wool, Hobbs, the brand, recommends that you quilt it, wash it, just on a non-agitating cool wash, and then air dry it. Wool can hold, I believe it's wool can hold 30% of its weight in water without feeling wet. So it's very important when I wash a wool quilt, I usually will set up 4 chairs and drape the quilt across the chairs, and then I leave it to dry for about 4 days. Because if it's not thoroughly dried, then it can mildew, and then it gets kind of stinky. However, my mother-in-law, and she told me I was allowed to say this, is a very lazy launderer. So all of her wool quilts, especially the ones she keeps on her bed, she washes with cool water and dries them like normal, and she hasn't had one fall apart yet. So I don't know, I guess I'm not saying I recommend that, but if you are also a lazy launderer, I think you could take your chances. So. Okay, so the last thing to talk about with your long-arm quilter is the quilt pattern. So there's a million different options. Some ladies are hand-guided quilters, some are computerized, so they might have, they might have a whole book of patterns that you can look through and choose. But mostly for your, normal regular quilts, you want about a 4 to 6 inch spacing between your pattern. So this will ensure that your quilt is still nice and warm, because your batting is your insulation. So the tighter your quilting, the less insulation you have, because you've broken up all of that batting into tiny little 1-inch squares, and it's not as warm as it would be if it had 4-inch squares. So the bigger your quilting, the warmer the quilt. My cotton quilts, because it's so tiny, stippled, this quilt's not going to be very warm at all. Cotton or poly, it doesn't matter. This is not going to be a warm quilt. So that's something to keep in mind when you talk to your long-arm quilter. And then choose a pattern, which I think is one of the funnest parts. I sit at my computer all day and design new patterns and play and, find something that matches your quilt, matches your style, and, let your quilter go to town. So, any other questions? Yes.
So I know I have a quilt from my grandma that is super fluffy thick, but I'm sure it's made with batting from Walmart or something.
Mm-hmm.
But a long arm machine doesn't do that kind of, what's the difference? Because I told the quilter, the one lady I told her, I said, I want this quilt super fluffy, and then it comes back flat. But I'm sure she used the thickest thing she had, but how does that work?
Yeah, so if it's the poly batting, it would just come in different weights. So mine is a very thin poly batting, but I think you can get it up to 16 ounce.
But how thick can you do on your machine? How thick, can you go up to 16 or is generally the 12 and the 8?
Yeah, so most long arms have an adjustment, and it's about the height of your hopping foot is what it depends on. So if you want a 16 ounce poly that's going to be 2 inches thick, then your long armer would need to adjust her machine, raise her. Yeah, and it's not, depending on the machine, I only know Gamels, but depending on the machine, it might be a hard adjustment to make. So she might not have been willing to, change her machine. But yeah, so mostly I just want to empower you ladies to know what to ask your long armor, because it can seem really foreign, and you want to be able to trust them, and but your expectations have to be in the right place. So ask her to show you a sample of the poly that she would be using, and then you could always say, is there any way we can quilt 2 layers of that at once, or what do we need to do to get it to what I want?
So did most long armors prefer that they supply the bat, or that you bring your own bat?
I have seen it both ways. The problem is there, with anything that goes into a quilt, there are some, there's always going to be a low end and a high end. Some low end fabrics or battings can cause what they call bearding, which is where the batting punches through and shows up on the back of the quilt. And the hardest part about that as a quilter is the quilter now looks like a bad quilter because you brought in a low quality batting. So in our shop, I should say my mother-in-law's shop, she eventually got to the point where she was selling her batting at wholesale price. She wasn't making hardly any money on it, but she was willing to do that so that she always knew she was using a high quality batting. So that was kind of the trade-off is, okay, I'm not going to make any money on it, but I'm also not going to have any issues with batting from here on out because I know exactly what I'm putting in these quilts. So I would say the majority of long armors will accept batting that you bring in, but if there's a problem with it, they'll probably point out, it wasn't, because it will make them look bad if it's caused by the batting, I guess. Yeah. One thing I just remembered I didn't touch on, and this is more if you're quilting your own quilts, but there are some types of batting that the way it's processed is it has a layer of, it's almost like a really thin layer of almost, it's like an interfacing, but really thin, so just a really light weave, and that's called scrim. So if you're doing your own quilt at home, look to see on your batting package if your batting is made with scrim. So basically what it is the manufacturers will put down this really thin layer and then place the batting on top of it and then use a needle to punch the batting into the scrim. And that's how it all stays together. So with Hobbs, the only batting that uses scrim is the 100% cotton. So we don't really have to pay much attention to it. But if you run into frequent problems with high quality batting that's getting punched through, it's usually your scrim is the wrong direction.
So where does the scrim go on the top or then or on the bottom?
On the bottom. Yep. And usually you can tell if your scrim is folded in half and then rolled up, that last fold, when you unfold the half, that's usually the inside. So I always unfold it and then put that side down so that I know my scrim is on the bottom. So. All right.
So only a scrim on one side.
Yes.
It's so it's not obvious.
No. So it's not super obvious, but usually the top, you run your hand across it. I do not look at it because it looks bumpy from both sides. So the top with no scrim is going to be smooth. And then you turn it over and the scrim side is bumpy because it's punched through the scrim. So there is a way to tell. It's just a little, so that would be the scrim side.
I think someone told me something about, like, if you were pushing a needle through, it's kind of
a little bit hard to tell, but actually it's smoother on the non-screw side, push a needle into it.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. If you poked it with a needle,
Or
it would go in easier
Yeah.
on the top than it would on the scrim side. Yeah, that's a good way to tell too. Yeah, so, like to purchase your own or what to expect?
What do you charge for like the elaborate item or quilting versus certifications?
Oh, yeah, pricing, of course. So, most of the long armors that I've talked to and that I work with, charge per square inch. So on something like this, so this is considered an all over pattern or an edge to edge, but because it's 1 inch, so they kind of measure the smallest distance on the pattern, and that's what size it is. So this is a 1 inch pattern, which usually I would say is about 3 pennies a square inch for an all over. Like my Idaho quilt, same thing, about 1 inch apart, but that one's considered a custom quilt because there's 2 different patterns. It's very, a lot more time consuming. That one would probably be more like 4 cents a square inch. One like this. So we kind of had a handful of patterns that we would only charge a penny a square inch. So if they wanted to do it for as cheap as they could, they were these patterns that we knew stitched out really fast. They're very large. So this one would be 1 penny per square inch. And it's again an all over, just very simple. Let's see. Oh, and then, so yeah, anywhere from, it's pretty rare to find 1 inch or 1 penny patterns. Usually they start at 1.5 pennies and go up to 4 pennies per square inch. So, and you can tell, so if you tell a quilter, like, I want this pattern and I'm willing to pay 1.5 pennies per square inch, then they'll make that pattern 4 inches tall. Or if you're willing to pay 3 pennies a square inch, they'll make it tiny, kind of thing. So, but every quilter is different. Just don't be afraid to ask what their rates are, how they calculate them. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 people that calculate the price of their quilt based on how many stitches it took to finish. They have a stitch counter in their machine, and they'll calculate on that. So it's very rare. So, thank you.
So on this last quilt,
Yes.
I found it really hard to find a quilter who's willing to do a stitch in the ditch like that.
Really?
Yeah, so is there, do they charge more for that? Is it harder? Is it?
Usually, yes. The way that I stitch in the ditch, and I don't know if this makes me lazy or genius, but the way that I stitch in the ditch is I draw a straight line on my computer. I'll mark points on the quilt with my computer, and then I let it stitch, and then I can sit there and manipulate the fabric and make sure that it's really stitching in the ditch. The stitching in the ditch is very difficult. It's hard to make it look good. It's time consuming. So I kind of have a cheater method of doing it, but I think it would still be considered custom quilting. So for something like that, if you have a lot of them, it might be worth learning how to base your own quilts and just throw it on your domestic. So unless you want other patterns combined with it. So. Okay, any other questions?
I still want you to show that.
Oh, yes, leave it.
I made her demo this sewing bag.
I'm in 4. So this is my sewing bag that I use when we're on the road, because we are on the road a lot. It is relevant. I quilted the outside layer with 80/20 just to give it some thickness. But this bag it's a pattern by, her name is So Demented online. But it's called a Sew Together bag. My husband calls it your Get Your Crap Together bag. So it has all of these different pockets, and then each zipper pocket has more things in it. So really helps me keep my crap together, and I can just throw it in my bag and it's good to go.
There's a pattern to make it yourself, or can you buy it already made?
There are a few people that will sell them, but the pattern is a little difficult to follow. So back when my mother-in-law had her shop open, one of the gals that worked with her was genius at writing tutorials. And so she goes, hey, I'm gonna do a sew along and I wanna write a tutorial for your bag. And the designer was like, oh, that'd be great. I'm having a lot of issues with it. And so they wrote this tutorial, and it's still on their blog. So if you give me your email, I'll send the link to it. But her blog has been inactive for, 8 years now, about? So she hasn't added any new posts since her shop closed down, 8 years, that's not right. But anyways, several years. And her blog still gets 2,000 hits a day because of this tutorial. It's insane. So yeah, I'll include that, but it's a really fun bag to make, super handy to have, and yeah.